Michael J.
So, Kaladesh Remastered, coming to a historic near you.
So kind of interesting. So Kaladesh Remastered is back for the first time. You know, it's both Kaladesh and Aetherworks squished together to form one best of set, and it's a digital only set. And unlike Amonkhet, so it's kind of interesting in that. So Kaladesh and Aether Revolt were on Arena during the beta, and they got taken off because they weren't standard legal anymore at the time that it went public, and also because, you know, Kaladesh is kind of busted. But while Amonkhet Remastered had a bunch of cards added, you know, that were the equivalent of the masterpieces, we're not really seeing that with Kaladesh Remastered. But what we are seeing is that, wow, did they include most of the juice. There's a couple key omissions, really, really, really key omissions, but there's a lot of stuff in here that I think people would have not guessed that they would actually include. What do you think is more salient to start with? The top, like the high level omissions, or the controversial inclusions?
Well, I mean, I think the inclusions are ultimately more interesting because that's what people are going to actually be playing with, right?
Well, they are, but remember, Kaladesh is a combo set, so they're all kind of interwoven. Take, for instance, Aetherworks Marvel. Aetherworks Marvel is in. Aetherworks Marvel is a card I think a lot of people would not have guessed is in because it was banned, right?
Yeah.
But Aetherworks Marvel's value is at least partially contingent on what other cards they included. Like, for instance, if they literally didn't include any other energy cards, Aetherworks Marvel would not be so busted, right?
I would agree.
Here are some cards that are in that you can include with Aetherworks Marvel. Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. That's a classic 1-2 punch, right?
A classic is exactly the word I would use.
And part of what's interesting about Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot in this context is that while Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot and Fireforger's Puzzle Knot are both included, and Cogworker's Puzzle Knot, the black one and the blue one are not. Kind of weird, right?
Yeah, but the green puzzle not being there is a big one.
That's the biggest game for sure. That's the biggest game
because that's a card you wanted. It's good. And
then Attune with Ether, that one's in.
Banned card.
Yep, that's another pretty sick one. And actually, on the note of green in this set, I mean, just running down some of the energy cards that are all included: the Longtusk Cub, the Servant of the Conduit, Bristling Hydra, Attune with Ether we mentioned, Whirler Virtuoso, and
Rogue Refiner. Yeah,
Greenbelt Rampager, if that's your jam. There's like a lot. Harness Lightning, Aether Meltdown.
How about Bristling Hydra? That's a good energy card.
Yeah, Bristling Hydra, definitely. And then Confiscation Coup, Glimmer of Genius. Like, most of the energy stuff is here.
How's the tower there?
So
Dynavolt
as
Tower.
As far as the Carless sources go, you do have Dynavolt Tower. They actually cut a bunch of the Carless sources, though. It's interesting. They kept some Carless sources that kind of are build-arounds in certain directions that don't really stack, and I think it's kind of wise. But like the artifact energy sources they have are there's the Aether Sphere Harvester. You know, that's obviously a big one.
A very powerful card in many different contexts.
For constructed, there's Dynavolt Tower, and I guess maybe the decoction module. I don't know. That's a little lean, right? Like, I mean,
well, I mean,
gotta kind of.
Would you count electrostatic pummeler as? I mean, it creates energy.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just talking about for the combo pieces. You're right. Yeah,
Oh,
for
okay.
as far as the creatures go, there's the pummeler, and I think that's the only one other than some common that's like a 5-cost 3/3. But and then also for engines, there's a common that's the tap. But anyway, most of the energy stuff is here, and that includes Aether Hub.
Yeah, that was the first place my eyes went. I'm like, is Aether Hub there? That card. I always just had a soft spot because I was such a fan of Tendo Ice Bridge, and Aether Hub is just a much better Tendo Ice Bridge.
Yes, you were the original Tendo Ice Bridge fanatic.
I mean,
history was on your side. History agrees with you.
It could be argued I played Tendo Ice Bridge even when it wasn't good, but I played a lot of Tendo Ice Bridge.
So let's see. Some other things that are kind of in the mix for the only energy stuff that's even missing isn't even like, it's like the Glassblower's Puzzle Knot and like Gonti's Aether Heart. But I
gotta stop you for 1 second.
Yeah.
We were talking about Tendo Ice Bridge for a second. I don't know if you know this classic story. My boy, Osip Levidovich, your boy, Mark Herberholtz, top 8.
Dude, how's Osip not my boy also?
I mean, how is he not my boy? Right? So
fair.
Two of our friends in the top 8 of Pro Tour Honolulu, and Osip goes to pick up his Tendo Ice Bridge with Beloku, but accidentally picks up Steam Vents. And he's just like, oops, I meant to pick up this one. And he's like, yo, dude, we're in the top 8 of a Pro Tour. And if Osip had picked up the Tendo Ice Bridge, he would have won that game. However, history will recall that the road to victory at that Pro Tour was on Heasy Street.
So Aether Hub is not the only land in this set. Dude. Inspiring Vantage, Concealed Courtyard, Blooming Marsh, Botanical Sanctum.
I mean, Inspiring Vantage
Bluff Canal?
is such a big game for Pioneer. I'm not sorry, not Pioneer, for Historic, right?
Historic. And Botanical Sanctum is no slouch.
Oh man, Botanical Sanctum, especially
and Blooming Marsh
in a set that's got Rogue Refiner. Botanical Sanctum is
totally.
No slouch. But I was just thinking, like, there's already just like Boros. I mean, I guess the Boros kind of tokens combo deck had fallen a little out of favor recently, but this keeps it a little bit of an oomph, right?
Yeah, and as far as like the Aether Hub, there's also Spire of Industry, and what's interesting about adding both of those is the ability to kind of imply. Okay, you know how there's been a bunch of basically mono-colorless decks in Historic relatively recently. Well, they use a lot of. I mean, they use all lands that have some utility because they have all colorless mana, but they don't actually need all of their lands to do something. It's not like you can use them all at the same time. Like they're playing like 4 Radiant Fountains and 4 Zhalfir Voids, and like that stuff's good. You're getting little edges from all those things, right? But if you wanted, you could play 4 Spire of Industry, 4 Aether Hub, and then you have access to stuff like Chromantic Lantern and Karn. So it's not like you don't have other ways to also fix your mana.
Yeah.
But you could actually play anything. You could play 5-color mono artifact, if that makes sense.
I mean, like you could do something like activate a Golos then, right?
Well, activating Golos is one thing that they already do. But what I mean is that you can actually... You could have little incidental support spells where you're like, oh, I want to have access to a couple negates, or I want to have access to... If there's anything you want to have access to, it's very... Like, you know how Affinity has frequently been in this spot where they're actually just 5 colors, but they're mono artifact?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You can be a mono artifact deck, but you can have access to one of this, one of that, one of this.
That's actually really fantastic, right? If you're the mono artifact deck and it's a sideboarded game and they're just like... ho-hum think they're gonna interact with your ace, and you're like, negate! And they're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Despite the fact that you have a colored source of mana in play.
And this is also a new dimension to these colorless decks because they're gaining both Aether Hub and Spire of Industry at the same time. So
I
that's
think
definitely one to watch.
there's no question that the format is going to have completely reimagined decks as a result of this set coming into historic. I mean, like just the sheer number of energy cards that you can. There's probably 3 or more different energy linears that you can make basically with Kaladesh Remastered cards and some support from the existing hundreds of cards that are in
Well,
historic, right?
well, thousands and thousands, but actually, I would go even further. By my watch, there's at least 4 energy-based archetypes that will emerge. Um, in my opinion, one of the most exciting of which is not surprisingly built around Aetherworks Marvel. In fact, a couple of these are Aetherworks Marvel, but in different ways. So when you're looking at Aetherworks Marvel, you're like, oh, what are all the ways to power up the energy? Most of them are here. Okay, well, I guess we're getting somewhere. Then what about things to cheat with your Aetherworks Marvel?
Yeah, that's the
Powerful
thing.
permanents.
What do you want to get with
So,
it?
first of all, the traditional approach, there's Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. That's a pretty big game, right? Like, you don't have Emrakul the Promise End, but Ulamog is pretty amazing off Aetherworks Marvel.
Yeah, that's a fine thing to get into play for free.
Then there's Ugin the Spirit Dragon.
That's all right.
Uh,
That's
that's
very
pretty
that's
good.
very
You
all right.
even keep your Marvel if you do
Yeah,
the
that's
thing,
highly
right? Like,
synergistic. You could probably keep your enablers depending on which ones you picked.
but that's just a pretty good card, right? So you can go a traditional route, and there's some really powerful stuff. But there's a new twist that's unlike anything that we've ever seen before in Aetherworks Marvel decks. You can play Turn Timber Symbiosis and Seagate Restoration. So the double face card lands that you can pay 3 life to untap them in Zendikar Rising. They let you put 8 more 7-drops into your deck so that you have just tons of Aetherworks Marvel hits. But instead of filling up your deck with uncastable cards, those are actually just part of your mana base. So, like, if you're playing with, say you were playing with 8 hits, like back in the day, you have like maybe, say, 4 Umags and 4 Emrakuls or something. Your odds of actually hitting one of the 2 of them, it's not like it's that good, right? Like, it's pretty decent, but what are we talking, like 50-50? And so a lot of the time you have to settle for something else. But like, if you've got 4 Ulamogs, 4 Turn Timber Symbiosis, and 4 Seagate Restoration, you're already up to like 67% or something. And that's not even counting if you play with any Ugins or anything else.
The Turn Timber Symbiosis is not doing anything for me, but flip it a Seagate Restoration.
Really? Please, well, allow me to walk you through some Turn Timber Symbiosis then.
Yeah, you gotta hit it again. The Seagate Restoration, that resolves?
Okay.
Come on.
Okay, so Seagate Restoration on turn 4 is pretty nice, right? But Turn Timber Symbiosis is no slouch. First of all, you looked at 6 cards and none of them were Ulamog, right? Now you're looking at 7 more cards. That, like, you can put Ulamog into play with Turn Timber Symbiosis. You don't get to exile any permanents, but you do have an Ulamog on the table. That's not like that bad, right?
I mean, when you say you have an Ulamog on the table, that's not that bad. I'm not sure how to respond to that. Yeah, it's not bad to have an Ulamog on the table. I agree.
And if you don't want Ulamog, you can pick something else that like synergizes better with Turn Timber Symbiosis. I just think Ulamog's such a big game, and I think that even if you have to backup plan Ulamog without getting the Eldrazi trigger, you're doing some big things. So, like, your odds when you Turn Timber Symbiosis, your odds of hitting an Ulamog off a Turn Timber Symbiosis when you just missed a Ulamog, that's already like 50-50 almost, 40-something, And so it's like, that's a pretty good state from what would otherwise be a forest. But that's not even the only thing. It's you can put Whirler Virtuoso into play as a 5/6 and get the energy and the Thopters, or you're part way up to your next Aetherworks activation, or you can put a Rogue Refiner in play as a 6/5, draw a card, get some energy. Those aren't even like that bad estates, right?
I mean, like the giant Whirler Virtuoso is not exciting to me. And then I thought about like, is anyone really going to beat that? Probably not, right?
Well, also you got to remember, this is taking the place of a forest. So, like, what else is in your 6 cards from Aetherworks Marvel? Right? Because if you had a forest instead of the Turntimber Symbiosis, then you'd what? Settle for just, I guess I'll just play a Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot or a Rogue Refiner.
Number of times I flipped over Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot with Aetherworks Marvel. This is probably like 40%. Just like mono puzzle knots.
But like the fact that you have this extra option, and it's a really good option, you know? And I do agree that that's not exactly as exciting as Seagate Restoration in terms of, like, the floor is lower, of course. Well, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's easier to see how the Seagate Restoration is going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. If you want to get an Ulamog, you miss the Ulamog, you hit the Turntimber Symbiosis, you could very easily have an Ulamog, right? That's the same. That's good.
And
It just doesn't have any +1/+1 counters.
Well, or exile the permanents, but who cares about the counters once you have an Ulamog?
Yeah, I mean, but once Ulamog is rumbling, exiling the permanents is, you can live.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If you ever get to attack with Ulamog, you're doing some pretty big things. But you could do other things. I mean, like, for instance, let me give you an example. What if you, depending on what this Aetherworks Marvel deck looks like, you could pick a different fatty. Right? Like, you don't have to have Ulamogs. And in particular, I think that once you're getting into a spot where you can play lots of double face cards, you might just not want to play with any cards that aren't just really good to draw. Like, I don't know how much you really get out of white, because white's got like the least good offerings for actual energy. But if you have use for the white double-faced land, I mean, 2/4/4 flyers isn't the worst. And it's just kind of interesting that instead of eating up 8 slots in your deck with bricks, you could just have 12 of your land be like really powerful plays. And maybe you don't have as high as spikes from Aetherworks Marvel hits, but the opportunity cost is so much lower.
See, I was initially imagining like playing like, obviously you have energy enablers, some removal, right? And then just like playing a ton of Gear Hulks. Right? Like, Gear Hulks, I'm like, oh, Noxious Gear Hulk is actually really powerful if you get it on the cheap in certain matchups. But that is far less ambitious than what you were talking about. You're...
Ambitious? Yours sounds more ambitious, right?
Why is mine more ambitious?
Torrential Gear Hulk is a 6-drop in your deck, whereas Seagate Restoration is a land.
No, I'm saying your deck has a way higher ceiling than what I was initially imagining.
Oh, yeah, I just think it also has a way higher floor.
I think that my way is not nearly as good as what you are suggesting in terms of modal double-faced lands and, I mean, it's funny to me how much I disliked Seagate Restoration initially and how absolutely pervasive it's been in multiple formats. Is this just going to be a whiz-bang 4 of in Historic? Right? Like, this seems fantastic to me. For the 15 minutes until they ban Aetherworks Marvel, like, I think I'd rather flip that than anything else. And we're talking about cards like Ugin. We're talking about cards like Ulamog. But the Seagate Restoration is so powerful if you flip it that way.
Yeah, it's really good to do early. Particularly if you don't have to pay any opportunity cost for it.
Like, I'm just like, can you get this faster than turn 4?
Well, it's kind of tough to get the 6 energy.
Yeah, you know what? I think like the Evolving Wilds type aspect of the deck is actually, we've got Fabled Passages. I don't know. There might be something there.
I think you run out of... I don't think you want to play. I don't even know if you can play Fable Passage because once you have
Oh,
4 Seagate Restoration and 4 Turn Timber Symbiosis and 4 Aether Hub, and presumably you want to play what? Like, do you want to play any stomping grounds or breeding pools or botanical sanctums? Like the first lists I put together, I was using about 15 or 16 land, like dedicated land. And remember, it's not like those are the only double face cards. Depending on how you want to play it, I mean, like Valakut Awakening is interesting if you go the route of I want to have a lot of expensive boom booms, because being able to just play Valakut Awakening and get rid of extra Ulamogs and Ugins or whatever, that's kind of an interesting thing to get out of your mana base.
oh yeah, that's totally valid. Like, I mean, the problem with the Aetherworks Marvel deck is you don't want to be drawing your expensive cards and then flipping over your Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot, that's what always happened to me. But in the case that you do, the ability to filter through some of that stuff is going to be valuable.
And like, I was struggling to even like I was trying to keep it so there's at least like 3 forests, an island, and a mountain, so that my 4 attuned with ethers have hopes of getting things. It's pretty hard to just stick more Fable Passages in.
Oh
And I
my
know
gosh.
I do get it. You're like, man, I could just get an extra energy. And that's not necessarily bad. It's just, I don't know. How many land do you even want to play in this deck, man?
I mean, I don't know. You've just completely blown my mind with this super low land count version, which seems like it's got to be the right version.
Plus, it's not just 16 land plus 8 or 9 double face lands. You can play library manipulation. This is historic. You got a bunch of options.
I want to play all the double face land. I will play the Amiria's Call. Like, it's clearly not very good. Doesn't matter. Like, you pay 3 one time. You're getting stuff back with Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. I'm less worried about that. You're gonna aggressively mulligan in this deck because the games that you have a turn for Aetherworks Marvel going are so different than the ones that you don't. And so, I think that you have to build your deck that you maximize the likelihood of winning on one Marvel activation. And if you get another Marvel activation, great. But you just want that Marvel activation to not be in attune with Aether.
Oh, yeah, totally. I don't think win is the way I would put it. I would say you really want to make sure that your first Aetherworks Marvel is so good that you'll be able to use it again. And like, for instance, if you draw 5 cards from Seagate Restoration and have no more hand size, that's great, right? You have a lot of tools for activating Marvel.
Running again. It like you're going to hit your land drops, everything.
If you play a 5/6 Whirler Virtuoso and get the energy, you're like, that's like a pretty good start for making sure you can use the Marvel again. I actually think that we're going to see Marvel decks that need to activate Marvel a lot more than they used to, because there's going to be less all in on hope I hit Emrakul or Ulamog, and a little bit more I'm doing something amazing every turn if I can.
But I feel like if you just Marvel into Ugin, right? Like, you're in great shape if you're Marveling into Ugin. Like you said, you can.
Well, the reason I didn't play Ugin in my first list were you can't turn Timber Symbiosis for Ugin. And it might still be right to just play or whatever, but there's some tension there. You want to make sure you have some fantastic turn Timber Symbiosis hits if you're going to go that way. And I think it's so free, there's a lot of incentive to go that way.
I mean, you're very likely to be playing Rogue Refiner in your deck, right?
Extremely. Every time I tried to build a list,
yeah.
Why would you not? Okay, you can't get enough energy without playing green. And if you play green, why would you not play blue? Like, if you play Jund, which are black and red are the 2 next best colors for energy, that means you're not getting Whirler Virtuoso or Rogue Refiner. Like, what are you even doing at that point? So I think you're playing Rogue Refiner for sure.
I mean, of the non-hits, call it, like kind of the setup cards instead of the payoff cards. I mean, I guess Rogue Refiner is almost a setup card. The green cards are clearly the best, right? Like, Attune with Aether and Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot are like block 1 and block 2 in the wall.
Sort of. See, I actually think that in the more dedicated combo versions that you're probably speaking to at the moment, totally, I agree with you. But I actually think that there's enough support and enough, like the amount that double face card lands give you incredible hits, so that you don't actually have to play with any expensive cards. I think you can actually just put Aetherworks Marvel in normal energy decks and have it be really good.
I mean, you could flip a 5/5 Cub, right? It's not the
Well,
worst.
yeah, but that's not what you're going for.
But
Like,
you
it's
could
not
get that, right?
totally. But like, if you're playing, okay, I guess to get to where we see why the fair stuff is so appealing, let's talk about a little bit what the other colors give you. Well, you hit the nail on the head that green gives you the best of everything. Blue gives you Rogue Refiner, Whirler Virtuoso, Aether Meltdown, and if you want it, you could have like Artifact Synergies or Counter Magic. If you play red, you get Harness Lightning and Whirler Virtuoso.
I
There's
think
not
Harness
really a
Lightning
lot
is
else you want.
excellent.
Like, what's that?
Harness Lightning is excellent.
It's excellent. Because part of it is this historic format is faster than the standard was where Kaladesh came out. I don't think you can just count on goldfishing. Like, you're going to beat some people that way, but you are not the fastest deck in the room. And particularly if your Aetherworks Marvels are not always hitting Ulamogs and that sometimes they're hitting Seagate Restoration. You can't just goldfish. You got to do some stuff. And Harness Lightning is a pretty great balance of some applicable stuff while also being part of your engine. If you don't play red, you can still get Aether Meltdown as sort of the compromise halfway version, which isn't too bad, but it's not nearly as flexible as Harness Lightning. Plus, you don't get Whirler Virtuoso. If you don't play red, your replacement for Whirler Virtuoso, like for instance, if you just play straight Simic, then you end up playing Llanowar Visionary as your other three. And that's not that bad. But it's not
seems
Whirler
like a pretty
Virtuoso.
substantial downgrade.
Totally. You're not getting the energy.
Yeah, it's just like it's not synergistic with the team. It's a great card, don't get me wrong. It's just not.
And I mean, the mana's not the worst. It's not like it's bad in your deck that just has like Ugins or whatever, or Ulamogs having extra mana sources. But it's a far cry from having half your Marvel activation. So what black gives you is kind of interesting.
Well, Patrick, you're 100% servant of the conduiting, right? If you're any green version.
In every one of these decks.
Okay.
Yes. For sure. And once you have 4 Aether Hub, 4 Servant of the Conduit, and 4 Attune with Aether, you do not need to play very many dual lands. Like I built a bunch of decks that had no blue-green dual lands. It just had 1 island, 4 Seagate Restoration, 4 Aether Hub, 4 Attune, 4 Serve. You really don't need 17 blue sources is a lot to play Rogue Refiner in your deck. So the mana is just going to be phenomenal. It's not even hard to play 4 colors, and I would play 5 if there was anything in white that we wanted.
Other than
it's just not hard.
The land.
Well, that's part of it is that you get the land for free so much that you're like, well, I already have 17 white sources in my deck. Maybe I should play any white cards. But
just how you describe this, I feel like I so enjoyed playing Historic previously. I'm gonna leave it at that for a second.
Black gives you Glint Sleeve Siphoner. That's not bad, right? It's not the most turbo creature for your combo, but if you're the more that you play a fair strategy, the more attractive Glint Sleeve Siphoner looks. The biggest thing black gives you, though, because you also get some other mediocre stuff. Like you get a really bad, you get the 3rd string Harness Lightning if you want the black one.
Is that live fast, die, whatever? I don't know the name of it.
Yeah. So if you want to play the black, though, the reason I like black so much that I really want to try to make room for it is Thoughtseize. I think that Thoughtseize is such a fantastic blend of disrupt other people's combos at low opportunity cost. It you can play it on turn 1, which is a time where if you don't draw a tune with Aether, you're often going to just be wasting your mana anyway. It also can force through your combo against permission. It's just so the perfect way to interact for this deck. It's hard to hold up counter magic, but you can like work it around Mystical Dispute and all that if you want. But it's not like Thoughtseize is so on plan in every way, you know?
Yeah.
Other than energy. But yeah, Die Young is not my favorite part of the energy kit out of black. Die Young is the harness lightning of sorts that you only get 2 and it's sorcery speed. The Live Fast is the really bad Sign in Blood of sorts. Like you get to read the bones without scrying.
Yeah, but you get energy, right?
Yeah, but the format's just too fast for that. You got better things to do for 3 mana than something like that, I think. It's not like it's a non-starter, but man, is that underpowered. Compared to the other 3 drops in the format. Like you can just, Uro is just legal, right? So like playing a card like Live Fast is kind of hope it doesn't come to that.
Oh my gosh, if you just compare those 2 cards, they both cost 3. Like, one of them costs you 2 life, one of them gains you 3 life.
Dude, if you want Uro sacrificing itself, that's more energy for your Aetherworks Marvel, man.
I might not mind that.
You can get it off the Trent Timber Symbiosis. It's not that good, but you can do it if you want.
Yeah, he's going to be a big boy before he dies.
On the note of what black gives you, there's another card in Kaladesh Remastered that is so revolutionary. It's so big. Fatal Push. Fatal Push has been included, which is like instantly skyrockets to the tippity top of like format defining removal in many ways. Now there is the new Fatal Push, obviously from Zendikar Rising, but having the real deal Fatal Push, when it like having it at instant speed is such a big deal, and being able to kick it, so to speak, with Revolt is actually, even though there's not true fetch lands, there's a lot of ability to kick it, and being able to Fatal Push for 1 mana and hit things that cost 4 is such a big deal. So I think Fatal Push is going to be a huge card in Kaladesh Remastered, and it's certainly, even though it doesn't give you energy, it's certainly got to be in the equation for an option to consider for your energy deck.
Even if the Aetherworks Marvel deck that you were describing, doesn't last, and obviously the only reason it wouldn't last based on how amazingly high the floor is probably going to be due to bans. I think Fatal Push is going to change the complexion of the format dramatically, right? Like, absolutely. That is the absolute enemy of, the red aggro decks, for example.
Oh, Michael J. never change.
I don't know what to tell you, man. I like to Heartfire Immolator in that format.
Yeah. Actually, on the note of red, is there anything in Kaladesh Remastered that you really like for red aggro?
Oh my god, yes. Bomat Courier is an assassin, right? Like, this is a
fantastic
format with so many good hasty 1-drops. You can just drop your hand, get, reload. That's one thing. That's the first card that jumps out. That card is going to be minimum. It's going to be great in the sideboard for the mirror, but I think it's actually just going to be a frontline guy with a bunch of all the other hasty 1-drops.
Well, I like. Doesn't everybody just play like Fervent Champion? Bomat Courier is in another league than Fervent Champion.
I think it's. I have a hard time believing I would not main deck 4 copies of it in a red beatdown deck. Then there's 2 other cards I think matter a lot that are in this set. One of them is Kari Zev, Skyship Raider, right? So that card is a 2-drop. It's a 1/3, but obviously it has Menace, First Strike, and hits a little harder because it makes a monkey. So that card is pretty good because it's got 3 toughness, and so it's actually pretty annoying for some of the fights that occur in the format. But What's more interesting to me than Kari Zev is actually Kari Zev's
Well,
expertise. Uh,
actually, if I could mention on something
sure.
and carry Zeb real quick, don't a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times you play Torbrand Thrain of Redfell, right?
Yeah,
And you get double your money if you're using carry Zev.
that's correct.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so carry Zev's expertise.
So Kari Zev's expertise is my threaten of choice. And I played this card in Pioneer, for example. Uh, the the thing is, if you're talking about a format where people are going to be dropping cards like Ulamog on you, just big threats that a red deck can't beat fair. You can't beat them, join them. How about having them join you? It's a pretty good way to do it. And the ability to drop a haste creature with Carries of Expertise as additional text or throw the last burn spell you need is, it's potentially meaningful. Like, all the threatens basically do the same thing, right? They're like 3 mana, get your thing for 1 turn, haste it probably. And, some of them have some additional text. This one actually has additional text that potentially could matter.
Well, and it's not. I mean, most of it is the 2 mana. Getting a free dark ritual, but you can also steal vehicles. And like, if people play Aethersphere Harvester or one of the other most influential cards in this set, Heart of Kieran.
Yeah, that's a big one. You can
That's a
steal a
big
harvester,
one.
but you don't get their energy, right? So if you don't have
You don't get
energy,
their energy.
yeah, that you can't.
No, but you can
burn
get
them.
it out of their way and not have them. I mean, Aethersphere, the Harvester is kind of an annoying
Oh
blocker
yeah, yeah.
sometimes.
They can block you and gain life, which is obviously poison for the red deck. So that's super a thing that you could do. But I think like just generally speaking, Karizev's expertise is more important to me than Karizev, and I think Karizev is pretty good.
Dude, stealing Heart of Kieran is such a big thing. And Heart of Kieran's going to be great in the format anyway. There's like a lot. I mean, there's not the Fairy Time Raveler, but most of the other Planeswalkers, there's a lot of Planeswalkers. And there's some artifact synergies, and there's even like mono colorless decks playing a dozen Planeswalkers. Like when you play with 8 Karns, Heart of Kieran looks fantastic. Now, there is no Smuggler's Copter, but there is Heart of Kieran, and there is another red card, though, that like the Chandra Torch of Defiance not do anything for you?
Eh, I think like that card is very good.
Yeah,
But
but you couldn't see sideboard in this in your red deck sometimes?
is it better than other options for this? I guess it is. It's got 4 abilities. It wasn't one of the ones that jumped out at me as being the most exciting, but you're probably right. It's probably better than other available Chandras. And I think
It's gonna be good for other decks and only like okay in red. But like you played the weaker Chandra, right?
I've played this
All
Chandra.
of the Chandras are
I've
the
played
weaker
it.
Chandra, but
I
this
think
one.
I've played every forecasted cost Chandra in Standard Constructed. So to answer your question, yes, I have played this Chandra. The most memorable Chandras to me, I've actually they all kind of blend together. I never know which one's ping face, which one's ping creatures, which one's flip over the top card, which one's draw a card. Have to read it. But all those things are kind of similar to each other. This card is obviously excellent. It's the red Jace the Mind Sculptor. No offense to Jace the Mind Sculptor.
So talk to me about Inventor's Apprentice. That's the Curd Ape, but instead of caring about a forest, it cares about you having an artifact.
Yeah, I think. I mean that card is not. I think a red aggro card. I don't know
No?
how significant. I mean, you don't always have an artifact, right? And like this
Well, it would
card's
depend on which build. If the more Bomac Courier types you play, it starts to add up in a hurry, right?
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things, right? Like it's like a Castle Embereth. If you have one catalyst, it turns all your Adventurous Apprentices on, right? So, I think do you think there's a vehicles deck, like a Mardu vehicles deck hiding in this format? If so, Adventurous Apprentice would be excellent there. I don't. I
Okay,
just. I'm not super into it in red aggro.
how many I guess how many hits do you need before you would be into it? Like if your deck just naturally had 20 artifacts and artifact creatures that all cost 2 or less, then would you play it?
Um,
And I can believe it if no.
I'm not sure. No, if you told me I had 8 ways to do it, or 8 or 12 ways to do it, that were like one or less, I'd be more likely than 20 ways that were two or less.
I see. So,
So like, you know, like those goblin decks like back in the day that like I'm just a regular goblin deck, no frills, no nothing, but I just happen to play Shrapnel Blast, and my Shrapnel Blast catalysts are Great Furnace, Mox Diamond, and Skull Clamp, right? Like that's just a great use of Shrapnel Blast, I think, in a goblin deck. Like it just you were gonna play Skull Clamp anyway because it's so busted. Great Furnace is not a big stretch for you. Chrome Mox, whatever the Mox was that was legal, it's not a stretch for you. So you just get to play Shrapnel Blast. But if you're
okay.
saying I need to cast a 2 casting cost card
No.
before I
Well,
play
let
the
me walk
Shrapnel
you through
Blast,
it.
I'm not
I
gonna
can
do
give
it.
you something a little more. I can give you the concrete examples. So Bomac Courier, I assume you're on board with,
100%.
and Embercleave, you're probably on board with playing, but that's obviously a more expensive way. So if that
Yeah,
were part of the 20, yeah, fine, but it's not. It's not part of the 12 that you're really excited about.
you know, I'm a kind of medium to heavy creature red deck guy in historic, and I've actually never played Embercleave.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, what if? Okay, how about Ginger Brute?
Ginger Brute. Yeah, that card's pretty good. Yeah, I can see it.
So like that's already 8 Raging Goblin types with with abilities and so on. Um, you do have to stretch a little, depending on how you want to do it. You end up those are the only two of that sort of a thing, Bomac Courier and the Ginger Brute. But if you had enough other artifact synergies, you have access to other one drops like Inquisitive Puppet or the Inquisitive Puppet's probably not too good at all. But there's one other one drop. Oh, Sparring Construct. And then for 2 drops, there's, thanks to Kaladesh Remastered, Scrap Heap Scrounger.
That's a big one. Yeah, that card's outstanding as well.
And then there's also, depending on how you want it, there's lots of little rinky-dink graveyard hate type. Like you can play Soul Guide Lantern, you know?
I'm
And I
not.
think you can't really
I
afford to
can't.
slow down your red deck to do this unless you're getting paid for the artifact synergies a different way.
I can't
But
imagine myself playing. First of all, I can highly imagine myself playing Soul Guide Lantern in my 75. I can't imagine playing it main deck just to turn Adventures of Apprentice on though. Like,
yeah, good.
I think
Yeah.
that I'm like not super sold on Gingerbread, even though it's a pretty good card. Like I think that you want to have enough spells that you make the kind of the red part of your deck go instead of just like the creatures version. Like you want your prowess to be turned on. You want to get multiple instants and sorceries in your graveyard so that your 1/1 wizard is a 2/2 wizard. I think those are important elements to have as far as my current conception of the deck, as well as ability to get cards in the graveyard, just so you get paid by your Bomac courier faster. And like the artifacts are pretty good, but I don't know. I'm not sold on just more 1/1 permanents in general. You know
That's
what I'm saying?
fair.
Like Gingerbread's just it's a very good card in some contexts. It's just not a high impact card for a deck that's trying to like kind of get in there, burn you. But maybe in a different deck, these are a great combination of cards. Like I can imagine a red green deck, for example, that has some stompy-ish elements, maybe a little bit bigger of creatures, and then plays a card like Shadow Spear. Like Shadow Spear is really cheap. You can imagine if you had Shadow Spear in a deck that had some bulkier creatures, all of a sudden that synergy looks pretty cheap to me.
Uh, I mean, they're not that much. I don't know if they're on theme enough, but Hope of Gurapur, and if you have access to it, but to blue mana, Merchant's Dockhand.
It's like
Those are also wonderful.
Hope of Girapur is obviously a card that is going to see play, right? But I think in my mind, it's just another one of these cards that isn't. It's a 1/1 for one. It's just not offensive enough that I would want to play it in the red deck. In another deck that
Yeah.
happened to have red, maybe sure.
And then also in theory, unfortunately, none of the Thopter cards are really lined. I mean, they're kind of basically what I'm wondering is if we're going to eventually be able to see some sort of an artifact aggro deck. But it's weird anyway, because I think that even when we do, I don't think Inventor's Apprentice is going to have a role in that deck. So I guess coming from the other side, but I agree with you completely. The other red cards, though, what about just Face You for my hand size? What is that, like Fateful Impact or something? Fateful Showdown. The 2 red instant, deal damage to any target equal to the number of cards in your hand, then discard the cards in your hand and draw that many cards.
Oh, this card seems... I've never played this card. This card seems pretty good.
Stormseeker me?
It's kind of Stormseekerish, but it can kill a big creature, right?
Yeah.
Well, that seems good.
You have to be a little bigger. I don't think it's good to just play straight up in the red aggro deck. Because, like, by the time turn 4 rolls around, you don't have that many cards in your hand.
Like, but can you imagine, like, if they had this card in the Owling Mine days? Like, that would have been good.
Oh, man.
Like, the Owling Mine would always just beat up by a big creature because they couldn't, just lightning bolt it or whatever. But this would, face or 5/5, no problem.
Mm-hmm. So this is kind of weird, but does Indomitable Creativity do anything for you? I mean, obviously, it's an important card for a different deck, right? But is there any use of Indomitable Creativity in a red deck? Specifically in the case of a deck that's a little bit more of a burn deck rather than a creature deck. Like, is it completely out of the question to imagine like one of those red aggro decks that only has like 8 to 12 creatures being some sort of a transformational plan? Because that lets you go for like such a different angle, right?
Yeah, I'm sure, like I think you said a second ago, Indomitable Creativity is gonna be an important card for some deck, but I don't know. Just my conception of a red aggro deck, even like a low to medium creature red aggro deck, I don't know. This is like one of those things which like seems like I'm working too hard.
Well, you get to pick up some things like, for instance, you get that red land that if you have at least 3 other, you get a 1/1.
Yeah, like that's the kind of thing that I imagine Indomitable Creativity being used in concert with that land to do a tinkerish activity.
And it's interesting that you get Indomitable Creativity for the tinkerish stuff, not for red aggro, but getting both Indomitable Creativity and that red Planeswalker, like that means you have access to a lot of ability to do the polymorph trick,
Yeah.
And it's not like there aren't plenty of red token making cards so that you can like, I don't know, that's like a pretty potent package.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I imagine it probably going the distance in Jeskai because even if there's like really heavy red requirements in the Indomitable Creativity and the fact that you want a bunch of mountains to get your token creature, I think that there's a great deal of comfort in hiding behind Teferi Time Raveler.
Well, Teferi's not legal anymore, obviously.
Oh,
but
well, nix that idea.
But yeah,
Who can
it was a little
track?
Too much comfort. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I was so excited to Teferi Time Raveler Aetherworks Marvel for just a second. I was like, wait a minute, no, they already no. Not like the vehicle support just really isn't there in for like a vehicle centric deck. Like Heart of Kiran is like a excellent card, sure, but like there's not exactly the same vehicle synergies as sometimes in the past. But here's one: is maybe this is just like it's not like it's embarrassing, but it's just not even close to as good as other options. But Skyship Stalker. God, if I could have had access to this in the Dragonwhelp days.
Skyship Stalker. I don't even know that card.
2 red for a 3/3 flying dragon. It's got fire breathing. plus you can pay a red to give it first strike into on a turn, and you can pay a red to give it haste into on a turn. So it's a dragon whelp that doesn't have the cap, plus it starts one bigger, plus it can get first strike, plus it can get haste.
How is this card not heavily played?
Because it's a 3/3. It lines up bad in the format. It just dies to like Harness Lightning or whatever.
It's just one of those cards that's just like one tick off of being really good, right?
Oh, this card would have been incredible in so many formats.
Yeah.
Can you picture Payweight Dave Price having access to Skyship Stalker? I mean,
I think about this. Like, what was the name of that guy?
People are trying to kindle it.
What's the name of that guy who's R for a 1/1? Lightning Berserker, is that his name? But then you could also just like pay R to put him into play, and then he comes back to your hand at the end of turn.
Oh, and yeah.
Is that his name, Lightning Berserker?
Yeah. What about it then?
Like I just remember like top 8 of Pro Tour Vancouver. There's all these red mirrors, right? And then like just kill each other's guys, and you're like mana flooded. You have like 7 mountains in play, and you're just like haste this guy in, and like he's still a 1 toughness creature, no matter how much you fire breathe into him. Like, do you just imagine like your attrition games where if it didn't have such a vulnerable toughness, like you just have 7 land in play, you play it and you haste it, and then you just put the rest of your mountains into it, and they don't walk away, right? Like this card seems like such a good last play to make in some matchups.
Yeah, I mean, it does cost a lot more than 1, but
yeah, but that guy was like it's this kind of the same. You know what I'm saying, right? Like once you're 5 mana and they're doing the same damage.
Sure. What about Pia Nalar?
I was never into that
there's
card.
There's a little bit of pedigree.
Everybody loves that card. I don't know.
It's a little bit bigger. It's not as ruthlessly aggressive as I think you play. I think it's going to end up being more of a card for the synergies. I mean, it's not like you can really just pick this Pia Nalar over Goblin Chain Whirler if your deck's all red.
No, it's clearly like on the order of what was the name of that card? Like RR1, make 3 1/1s. That was really good.
Hordeling Outburst.
Yeah, this card's just like very similar in output to that the turn that you play it, but then much higher upside.
Here's one to give you some nightmares. Angel of Invention. Do you care about that one?
No, I thought you were going to say Authority of the Consuls. Because that's really that is a format flipping card.
Dude, Authority of the Consuls is so good.
Like not only
and it's actually got the synergies too.
It murders the red aggro deck, but it also murders like if you were going to do like one of those some sort of like Tinker haste in rush kind of thing. It's bad for those people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different possible combo decks, whether it's one big threat with haste or it's an infinitely wide small threats. That Authority of the Consuls can just do some really good work for you.
It's so good against people making 1/1s.
But no, Angel of Invention, that doesn't do. You're not worried about it.
Worried? No, not really. I mean, if people want to beat a red deck, they've always been able to, especially if they're playing white. I mean, do you think this card is more dangerous than any other Baneslayer Angel somebody might play against you?
I mean, not necessarily, but it is 2 more tokens, right? Like you're going wide, and it has some synergies that might make it so that somebody just plays it incidentally. But whatever. What about Cataclysmic Gearhulk as far as white cards go?
I don't know. I've always been pretty medium on this card. I don't see why it would be so. I mean, I think in the right matchups, it's just going to get a lot of value, right? And it's an imprecise tool a lot of the time.
Okay. Toolcraft Exemplar?
Ooh, now there's a card.
That guy hits pretty freaking hard, right?
Yeah. Like, that's a Curd Ape, man.
Is that a Curd Ape? That's like that's like 86% of a Nakatl.
Yeah, this card is that is a card.
you obviously have to actually do it, though, right? But you actually, the fact that you have Toolcraft Exemplar into Heart of Kirin, that's a thing that needs to be taken seriously.
Yeah, but like people
If
are
you're playing that kind
already
of a deck.
already going to be playing like what's it like Sky Mall, the name of that card. Like people just
Sure.
play with equipment. Like they're like a white weenie deck with equipment is in
Dude,
vehicles.
Toolcraft
They're
Exemplar,
all
you
friends.
get, dude, Toolcraft Exemplar was born to wield the Embercleave.
Ooh.
Sort of. The timing is slightly awkward, but you can
I
work it
don't
out.
know, man. I'm looking at that inspiring vantage now. That seems fantastic to me.
Here's a card that I know is very near and dear to you. Gifted Aetherborn.
Yes, I agree.
2/3 Death Touch Lifelink.
What do you think about the aerial responder? Do you think that one's gonna give
No,
anybody nightmares? No, this time around
no,
either.
no. I think that the like Nighthawk Scavenger is at a different tier
Yeah,
power level.
same. I think that Death Touch and Vigilance are two different abilities.
Herald of Anguish, Gonti, Lord of Luxury. Those are both
Gonti's gonna be
interesting.
a that's like one of the things that you have to consider about the inclusion of this set in historic is how many tools are available to fair decks, right? Like Gonti is a great example. I think like one of the decks I think that I'm gonna want to explore is around Dynavolt Tower. I mean, you've got all kinds of Glimmer of Genius and Harness Lightning to power that up. Regular spells power up Dynavolt Tower, which is different than a lot of the other energy stuff, and you just interact with people.
Gonti actually has that interesting is a rogue aspect. And in fact, this set has a few different rogues. Like, obviously, Glintseed Siphoner is a rogue, and Fourth Bridge Prowler, which is that black for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you can give target creature plus -1/-1 until end turn, and it's a human rogue. But having access to all these rogues suddenly kind of changes the dynamic with regards to what's possible for playing Dimir rogues in Historic. You just have access to a lot of stuff that's like pretty good that you don't get in Standard.
Yeah, for sure. But just another card that I think that is worth talking about from fair cards, potential nightmare cards. Comball, Console of Allocation. What a miserable card.
I guess only if you're like a red mage, right?
I mean, like, yeah. Okay, fine. Yes, it's not real card advantage. It just counters all of your burn spells to death.
There could potentially be Sly Requisitioner combos to keep in mind, or Marionette Master combos. Yahenni, Undying Partition, is a 0-cost sack outlet.
Yeah.
Yahenni's Expertise. You could do worse than Yahenni's Expertise now that there's some pretty good 3-cost Planeswalkers.
What's your favorite thing to round it out the ep? What's your favorite thing that we haven't talked about that you think might happen?
Favorite thing? Because, man, I've been so focused on
Marvel.
Yeah, maybe. I'm looking forward to Unlicensed Disintegration being underrated again.
Oh man, that card is fantastic. Good answer.
Yeah.
I was thinking Panharmonicon.
See, I don't know. Like, what do you want to Panharmonicon? Just everything?
Cloud Blazer.
Because you got to remember, one of the other cards that is not included is Felidar Sovereign, thank God. But if you're going to be boinking Cloud Blazer...
Here's my thought. For sure Marvel's getting banned. So I'm looking ahead.
Okay. Dude, you gotta work. It's not like Marvel's just out of the... Like, you're going to have to... Finding the right recipe is not going to be trivial.
No way, man. Some genius like Patrick Chapin is going to break it for everybody. It's going to be there for 15 minutes, and they're like, then the work is done. You did the work. Now everyone can just use your work. They're copying off of you like they did in math class. But no one's going to ban Panharmonicon, right?
No, they're not. No.
It's just like bundles and bundles of joy for you.
And dude, we didn't even we didn't even touch on Renegade Rallier or Winding Constrictor. There is some juice.
Winding Constrictor. You could
It's so obvious. It's all the same thing.
Such an Obzon deck now.
Dude, you can go a lot harder. I don't think you even need to play Obzon. Maybe. Oh, yeah, you do. You're right. No, you have the other Winding Constrictor. You're totally right. That sounds really good. Thank goodness. Walking Ballista also not included.
All right.
All right. See you next week, dude.
Bye-bye.
And maybe we'll talk about a Chroma.